and welcome to Counterpunch Radio. My name is Eric Draitzer. Thanks so much for tuning in, coming back to the show. First time listeners just finding the show, welcome aboard. Hope you enjoy it. As always, I'm just do a quick pitch for Counterpunch. Counterpunch Plus, our subscription section on the website. That's a great way to support the work that we do, the work that we've been doing for nearly 30 years. Lots of exclusive stuff over there. We have a great stable of authors and contributors giving all sorts of perspectives on a wide range of issues, international issues, economics, cultural stuff, all kinds of very good information and analysis there. Please go to Counterpunch to the website, get yourself a subscription. And while you're supporting your favorite independent media outlets and your favorite people, you should also head over to democracyatwork.info. You should subscribe to the newsletter from Richard Wolff and the gang over there, all of the great work that they do. I mean, it's an endless stream of good stuff. I highly recommend it. Richard is back with us to talk about economic issues. The website, of course, RD Wolff, that's with two F's, rdwolff.com. You could find all of his work there. Richard probably doesn't need this introduction, but I will do it anyway. Professor Emeritus from UMass Amherst, currently visiting Professor of International Affairs at the New School. The podcast and show Economic Update, which is syndicated and can be found all sorts of places. Of course, just all of his good stuff. Richard, thanks for coming back and chatting.
Oh, my pleasure, Eric. Thanks for inviting me.
I am a big fan of all of your work and, of course, of the analysis. And right now, we seem to be on the cusp of a very important moment, maybe even a transitional moment in our economy in the United States and in the West broadly. So everybody's talking about it. Richard, let's start with inflation. Inflation is the watchword. It's what everybody's writing about. Think pieces every single day. Tell us a little bit about inflation from your perspective. What's driving it? How should we understand it?
Well, the irony is that inflation is it's one of those topics in economics about which people talk, but which they never think about, and which is not very well taught in our schools either. So, forgive me, but I want to start at the very basics. An inflation simply means a general rise in prices. No magic, no complication. It just means not every price rises and not that they all rise the same, but that in general there's a marked rising of prices over time. So, for example, the United States government tells us now that we're currently at an inflation rate of about 8.5%, 9%. Which is what it's been over the last year or so, and it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. What that means, very simply, is in order to be able to buy the exact same bundle of goods you afforded a year ago, you would now need 8.5 to 9% more money to pay the higher prices to get that same bundle. So, for example, if your wage or salary hasn't gone up by 8.5 to 9% from last year, you're falling behind. You will not be able, with, for example, your 3% or your 5% or your 7% increase in income, if you've had any increase, it will still not be enough to buy what you could afford a year ago. I might mention that the current rate of wage rising is about half that, 4.5%, which means, to be real simple, that the working class of the United States is getting the shaft. It is being hurt. If your wage didn't go up, if your wage went up by as much as 5 or 6%, you're still falling behind. All right, keep that in mind. Now, the simple analytics. Who raises prices in the United States? The answer, employers. If you're an employee, that's not your job. It's not written anywhere in your job description that you participate in determining the price of whatever goods or services you help to produce. You get a wage, you know what it is, it's in your envelope every Friday, etc., etc. You don't set prices. Employers do. Employers are less than 1% of the people of this country. They're the ones who set the prices. They're the ones who are raising the prices. They're the ones who literally cause the inflation. We all pay the higher prices at the supermarket, the department store, wherever we go. They set them 1%. We pay them 99%. Don't ever forget that, because it'll help you navigate lots of airy language that is more meant to disguise all of that than to face it. All right, next step. Why would employers raise prices these last 12 months way much more than they did in the last, say, 20 years? Right? Average inflation rate over the first 20 years of this century was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 2%. Suddenly, we're seeing them going up 8.5%, 9%. What's going on? Why would the 1% of employers suddenly be raising prices? Now, here's the answer, which already everybody knows, but it kind of gets lost in all the verbiage. Employers are in the business of making money. We know that. They tell us that. It's no secret. If you go to business school, you get an MBA, a Master of Business Administration, and the courses teach you that every business decision you face, you've got to connect what your options are to what will boost your profits, what will get you to be a bigger company, your market share, and all of that. So we know the answer. Why did they raise prices? Because the answer is the same for why they do anything. It's profitable to do that. If we can get away with it, in other words, if people will still buy the stuff, obviously we will not raise prices if we lose the customer, because that's not good for profits. You only do it if it is profitable. If the inflation stays for the last year, as we know it has, and if it's predicted to go up more, which it is, well, then we know that the employers got what they were looking for: higher profits from the higher prices, thereby justifying their decision. Now, the last step. Why are employers interested in raising profits? Well, we kind of know that, but why particularly now? And then we'll get to that's it. That's the answer. Here we go. Over the last 2 years, a huge portion of America's businesses lost money. Not only did they not make money, they weren't profitable. If you were a restaurant, you were closed. If you were a factory, part of the time your workers were sick and they were out, or your bosses were sick, or 100 different things happened because, we had a really rough time, 2020 and 2021. We had a combination of the worst public health failure of our country, COVID, and a crash, second worst economic crash in our history, beaten only by the 1930s Great Depression. And we had them at the same time. We've never been in that kind of a situation. So these businesses lost, here we go now, 2 years of profits. They want to make up the hard 2 years they just got through. And I'm not even talking about the businesses that disappeared and will never come back. I'm talking about those that survived. They want to recoup their losses. And here we go now. This may be unsettling for folks, but this is how capitalism works. The fastest way for an employer to make more profits is to jack up the prices of whatever that employer sells. It's quick, it's easy, and boy, does it deliver. All you have to make sure of is that there's enough purchasing power out there so that people will grumble and mumble, but they'll shell out the money. And since our government, worried about the collapse of our economy for the last 20 years, has been shelling out more money and creating it and pumping it into the economy than we've ever seen in peacetime history in this country, there's no shortage of money out there. And when you have the money available and you have the businesses gung-ho to raise the prices, you get the inflation today. Don't be fooled. It isn't the war in Ukraine. It isn't this mysterious nonsense called supply chain disruptions. This is a way for businesses to do what they've always had to do. Employers know that if the buyer is aware that you're jacking up the price to make more profit, that may risk upsetting your buyer, turning him off, alienating him. So it's really important when you're jacking prices up the way they are now to blame somebody else. Blame COVID, blame Russia, blame, who can disruptions, Arabs, whatever you can think of, muddy the water so that the anger of people having to pay more